Good morning, dobar dan. Otto Miettinen is my name. I'm going to talk about Finnish forests today, and I'm representing an NGO network here. Called Environmental Paper Network. And just a brief introduction. Again, this is an organization that doesn't have a really visible public profile. It is a real network in the sense that the secretariat is only 10 people working for it. It coordinates over 200 NGOs in two spaces. One of them related to paper industry, so it advocates for a transition of paper industry towards more sustainable. More sustainability and also decreased consumption of paper products. Then lately has become quite active on this biomass, wood-based, forest-based biomass discussions. And EPN is quite critical on the industrial use of wood-based biomass and its promotion. Yes. I also have another hat, so to say. I have an academic background. I'm a biodiversity scientist. But here I'm going to talk from a polemic NGO perspective. Why we talk about Finnish forests? I think one of the reasons is that Slovenia has sought to align itself with Finland and a couple of other countries when it comes to European Union policies. There's a For Forests grouping created for this purpose in 2022, and yes, your own Minister of Forestry and Agriculture describes it as being about sustainable, green, climate neutral, and competitive bioeconomy. All themes that I can probably everyone can assign to. I'll look a little bit deeper on this grouping and what it stands for. Why these four countries? Now, Finland is on the northeastern flank of Europe, and it is the second most, has the second highest forest cover in Europe after Sweden. Now, Austria and Slovenia, these two other countries, much smaller forest areas. For instance, France and Germany, Romania, Poland, all are bigger forest countries. But yes, indeed, if we look at you can't really see it, but this slide. If we look at the percentage of forests covered by, percentage of land covered by forests in these in European Union countries, so Slovenia and Austria are indeed above the average and on the top, after Finland and Sweden, but also Baltic countries, which are not part of the grouping. Okay, so this year there was a meeting of this group in Austria, and they produced a memorandum or joint statement, I should say, and this is just my analysis of that text and what this alliance stands for. So it's about economic interests, ownership rights, promotion of those ones, promotion of wood use, and particularly for energy. That is clearly stated in this text. And then very importantly, for Finland at least, the national self-determination. Finland doesn't want EU meddling in forest issues, and it is seeking support from other countries within European Union for that. And now, to me, this doesn't really look like a holistic perspective on creating a sustainable future for forests in Finland, in Europe. And in Finland, the media summed it up like this, that Finland groups with 3 other countries to defend forest industry in the European Union. This is pretty much the perspective how Finland sees it. Support for its current practices and forest model. And Finland is quite keen in promoting its forests. Finns are usually not very arrogant or pushing their views, but in the forest, policy space, that is not quite the case. And as here our current Minister of Forestry states, Finnish forest management could serve as a model for all of Europe. This is typical Finnish discussion and promotion from the politicians, especially from the more right-wing governments. Now, what is this Finnish forestry model that they're promoting? I'm just going to give a few perspectives on it and describe it shortly. So, intensive clear-cut forestry with a rotation of 60 to 100 years. So forests are slow growing. So their rotation times are quite long. It's native species based, so a few tree species are utilized. It is, while being intensive, it's also extensive. It covers most of the landscape in Finland. And it is very distinctly geared towards production of pulpwood for the forest industry. Forest landscape from northern Finland, not untypical. Logging size is a bit larger in the north than in the south. Well, there's a large clear cut and some mire areas with a 10-meter wide ecological zone protecting, in quotation marks, the mire. One very special character of Finnish forests is that we have a lot of peatlands, and in addition to that, they have been drained to a very high degree, and this shows up in the European Union debate, so that's why I'm mentioning it here. So each individual ditch that you see in the forest is not very big, just 0.5 meter wide, and not like what you would see, for instance, in Indonesia in peat swamp forests with 10-meter wide canals. But there are millions and millions of them. Just to show a map picture, any area in Finland you go to in the south, you would have all the mires modified this way. And this was made to promote wood production. So it is very much related to forestry. And yes, the brown part of this right hand side, on your left hand, yes. On your left hand side pie chart, that is the soil carbon in peatlands, and that is by far the most terrestrial carbon you have in Finland. And what happens with these peat areas is quite significant for Finnish and actually even to some degree European Union land-based emissions. Yes, most of them have been modified, which are those. Okay. Economically, just a few figures. I'm not an economist. Finnish forest industry still has a significant part to play in the economy. It has been going down. There are lots of private forest owners that own most of the land. A quarter is owned by the state, and there are another 5 to 10% by other public entities. 3 big internationally well-known pulp and paper companies or forest conglomerates dominate the economic space: UPM, Stora Enso, and Metsä. They are among the 10 biggest companies in Finland still. No, we can't. Okay, just all this logging. There's actually log harvester doing this clear cut here. Doesn't show up in this figure. Number of people working in the forest sector has gone down 2/3 in the last 40 years. So it's highly automatized and quite effective, but not very important anymore for the national employment. But though in the rural space, it is still quite important. Politically, forest industry is close to the hearts of Finnish politicians. Just to give you a few examples, so here we have a new permanent secretary in the Ministry of Economic Affairs. He used to be also the secretary for the Ministry of Environment just a few months ago. And he was this Otto Miettinen used to be the head of the Finnish Forest Industry Federations. So nothing wrong about that, but shows the link that the Finnish Forest Industry Federation has to the political establishment and the ministries. Now, the current head of the Forest Industry Federations, Paula Lehtomäki here, she is a well-known politician, also former Minister of Environment. Quite importantly, what is the Finnish forest model? It's also, aside this fact-based assessment, it is a narrative. So to back up a little bit, so Finland, today is the Independence Day of Finland. So 107 years ago, the Parliament of Finland declared independence from Russia. Now, before the Russian Empire, we were part of Sweden for 500 years. So rather young nation in European terms. Before the independence and even after that, the economic space was dominated by German and Swedish players. And yes, they brought also the German forestry model to Finland. Now, before the Second World War, also the economy was dominated by the foreign actors. But as after Second World War, Finland had to pay for its war compensations to Soviet Union. It had to develop the industry quite heavily, based on domestically. And the forest industry became like the crown jewel in the Finnish psyche. So forest industry, especially in the eyes of the older generation, is really something to be proud of, and it's and to some degree that is there's reasons for this, but then it is I would describe it that sometimes it goes over to hubris. So you cannot criticize the forest industry in Finland in any way because it is the best in the world. Full point. And so I just took this recent statement by our minister because it sort of sums up this mentality quite well. So the post-war forestry in Finland is a success story and the basis for our national economy. Now it's about 3% of the GDP nowadays, but still this is the narrative. Yes, things are and once you hit this narrative, it's quite difficult to change it based on facts. And you will, when you discuss with Finnish forest actors, you will often encounter this sort of quite a deep-rooted cultural perspective on forestry and what it is in Finland. Just the industry is now in a, I wouldn't say crisis, but in a time of transition. Its share of economy is declining, and the old value-added products based around paper are being consumed less and less. So the production is moving toward bulk. And now the industry does see this, and also a lot of actors in Finland from all perspectives, all stripes of color, so to say, see this as an issue. But so far we don't, and there's a lot of talk about new innovation, but so far we haven't really seen any of this take place in real economic terms. The three big companies are still pulp and paper producers, sawmilling companies, and the so-called bioeconomy hasn't really started to show in any new products that would significantly influence their revenue yet. There's a very healthy debate in today's Finland about logging levels. The traditional perspective is that our forests grow a lot. There are more wood there than in the last 100 years. And this forest should be logged more to help us mitigate climate change, to substitute products that are worse for climate than what we get from forests. So the annual growing stock of forests has really gone up, partially due to peatland destruction, partially due to climate change, partially due to active forestry. the annual increment in the stock has been going up even higher, even faster. And there's say more majority of political elite and forest industry promote more logging to use up more of that stock. It is sustainable from the wood cubic meter perspective, shall I say. Now, basically civil society and I would say majority of the scientific community has basically stood up and wanted to challenge this view. So here's a scenario of Finnish forest landscape when we increase logging. So if we log more, how much more carbon ends up in the atmosphere? We lose a lot of forest carbon, the blue lines on top of the zero line. Some of that is gained in the substitute something else that is producing emissions. But that substitution effect, which are the brown lines below zero here, is nowhere close to the emissions that are caused by the logging. So whether you increase logging or decrease the logging, you have the same picture. So basically, more logging and more means more carbon in the atmosphere, even in taking account the substitution impact of the products. And this has led to the situation now that we have had more logging, especially for energy, where actually the Finnish sink from land-based sink has decreased to zero, and that has meant that Finnish emissions, taking into account the carbon emissions from the land use sector, are basically steady, and while they should be decreasing. And this is something that the Finnish government cannot get over with, and it basically will only change if we can change the forest management scheme. And the main reason for this is increased biomass burning. The purple line shows that we have more and more share of biomass burning, whereas the traditional forest industry uses less wood than the biomass burning nowadays. 60% of the wood logs in Finnish forest ends up as being burned. That is not all directly as firewood, but as an end result, that is the case. And the main causes, according to the Finnish Panel for Climate Change, peatlands, high logging levels, basically. And they point out that there is not enough focus and emphasis on changing this situation at the political level, and that we will miss our EU targets as well as our national targets on climate change emissions. To not go over time, I'll skip a few slides. Well, I'll just say that Finland has a major issue with forest-based biodiversity as well. I don't have time to talk about it more in length now. But we have protected about 6% of our forests strictly, but it is very much focused in the far north. And in the south, the situation is pretty dire, and that's where most of the diversity is, actually. So, to sum up whether Finland is a good model to follow, now, I don't claim there are lots of good aspects in the Finnish forestry system and information systems. And its economic benefits, but this is failing on some grounds quite clearly now. So low bulk production promotion and bioenergy promotion is not leading to desired policy outcomes, and biodiversity conservation is basically failing at the current phase pace of conservation. Finland forests discussion and politicians are impacted by the forest industry interests. So, for instance, in this for forest groups, when Slovenians are dealing with Finns. They should always keep in mind that this forest industry, pulp production based interests are there always, somewhere lurking behind. Now, I would say that the Finnish forest model is also hardly applicable in Slovenia, but more broadly outside the boreal zone. It requires a lot of bulk, a lot of area to succeed, even at the level that it is succeeding at the moment. From the environmentalist perspective, we need a clear transition away from the current status quo toward more climate-friendly products from the industry. Less wood for energy and pulp, and more for wood products, and maybe new generation of bioeconomic products. And the logging level needs to come down to become more basically carbon neutral, which it is not right now. And we also, actually even the forest industry is promoting for continuous cover forestry. And Finland really doesn't have a recent history of continuous cover forestry. So this is something where actually Slovenia can advise Finland to some degree. Yes, and finally, we do need a lot of more conservation areas. Right, thank you.